Hello everybody, this is a response video to Retro or Die, who does, like game pickups videos. He does reviews of games and movies. Unfortunately, his movie reviews tend to get flagged because everything is copyrighted, but his channel name, Retro or Die, it means that he wants to have a complete collection of every video game he grew up with or die trying, which you really gotta kind of admire that enthusiasm. But anyway, a few weeks ago, I'm kind of late with this response because I had other videos planned for already, but anyway, he did a video called 5 Retro Video Games That Need an Overhaul. In other words, what he talked about in this video, which I'll have the link to his video in the description, but in his video he talked about how some retro games aren't as fun as we remember them. Like, we go back and play them, and whether it's due to controls or graphical limitations, it's hard to enjoy them like we used to. So he picked 5 that he would love to see get an overhaul. In other words, bring them back and like tweak them up a bit to like fit today's, engines, if you will. So I'm gonna pick 5 of myself to do. And this isn't a countdown video either. I'm probably gonna do one of those next month just to get that out of the way. But the first game is T2, the arcade game. Now, the original arcade game of this, the Midway shoot 'em up, I used to play that all the time in the arcade. And, because this was the early 90s, a lot of those games, much like fighting games, for example, a lot of them were ported to the home consoles, like Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. And at the time, because, well, we were kids, so we didn't really give a shit that the games were, kind of watered down, and it was just exciting to bring a touch of the arcade home to your living room. But that's the thing, because I have played I pretty much grew up playing the arcade game, and when I go back and play this one, it is fun, but it's just not the same. It makes you feel like, I just wish I was playing the arcade one, which, I mean, if you want to pay a couple grand for the actual cabinet, then go ahead, but, and I know there have been other arcade Terminator shoot-'em-up games, but I'm talking more about the retro ones from, back in the day. And that's the thing, because Nintendo still kind of fools around with, motion controls and stuff, something I would love to see is if they made, with the Switch, a little holder type thing with the Joy-Cons, like how the Wii had that zapper thing. I kind of liked it myself. If they did something like that with the Joy-Cons, and then they could port this game onto the Switch, not this version, but the actual arcade one, so it would be somewhat, more like the arcade. That would be awesome. Now on to the next game, it's Turok Rage Wars for the N64. I never played too many of the Turok games other than for the Deathmatch, and the one on Game Boy, but that's a platformer, so that's a little bit different. But this one, Rage Wars, I played the shit out of this. And the problem with this, like a lot of, not all of them, but a number of N64 first-person shooters, it's the controls that really kind of... See, for the past, ever since the 6th generation, even before that, we've had, controllers have 2 analog sticks. So, one is for movement, the other one is for looking and aiming and all that, so it makes it much easier to play first-person shooters. And we've become so accustomed to that, whereas to go back and play a first-person shooter on the N64, well, more specifically Turok games is just one of the examples, but is that it doesn't have 2 analog sticks, it has just the one, and then the C buttons, which are directional buttons for movement, so, like I said, we've become so accustomed to using 2 analog sticks, to go back and use directional buttons is a bit, So if they could bring that game back, The next one is a PS1 title, which this might be a bit odd, but it's Loaded. Now, I love this game. My brother used to rent this all the time back in the 90s. And it's a great game. The characters are really cool. The core factor is awesome. The music is fucking badass. But the thing is, the levels are a little hard to navigate. Because, see, it's an overhead shooter, but it's kind of like a dungeon crawler as well. And that's the thing. The levels, like I said, you have to backtrack and find keys and stuff, which, personally, I like that in games. I love a good challenge, but for this one, it's a little too confusing. Some of the levels are kind of hard to find out figure out what you're doing and stuff. And yeah. What else? And that's the other thing is that, despite the fact this game has really good music, like the first level, I like the music on the first level, but it's kind of bland. So if it takes you a while to beat the first level, like, you know, after a while that music's just kind of like yeah. So the next one, we have another PS1 title, and it's Legend of Dragoon. What? No, don't get me wrong. I friggin' love this game. I remember my brother got me this for Christmas during my sophomore year of high school, and once I started playing it, I couldn't put it down. You know, literally one of the best RPGs I've ever played. However, the thing with this game is, whenever I went back to play it at one point, and I'm not a big graphics hound, to be honest, but when I went back to play this, the graphics are just so pixelated. Like, when you're moving or walking around, the characters are kind of blocky and stuff, and it was just, like, I'm not a big graphics hound, like I said, but it just, I couldn't really enjoy it as much as I once did, because everything is so pixely. I mean, don't get me wrong, the game is awesome, it's an absolute masterpiece, but it's just the graphics are definitely kind of dated. And that's the thing, this game could not only use an overhaul, but it really deserves an HD remaster. I would love to see that happen. For the last one, it's Glover. This is a very mediocre game, but I find myself so drawn to it. I think maybe it's just because I like weird stuff. And the problem I have with a lot of these, when I go back and play them, so to speak, with these 5th gen 3D platformers, it's the camera angles are so much of a pain in the ass. Like, you have to keep adjusting them. Like, for example, if you're, like, let's say you're walking across a narrow plank, and you have to keep adjusting the camera angle or risk falling off. And that's one reason I chose Glover, is because, like I said, I still love to play this game. It's still fun. It has great music and everything. I know it's on PS1 too. Maybe that one runs a little bit smoother. I don't know. I've never played that version, but like I mentioned about the camera angles, on top of that, each level you have to navigate a ball from the beginning to the end by, you know, and you have to avoid spikes and other enemies and stuff because they can break the ball. So combine that with trying to adjust the camera angles, it's such a pain in the ass. So yeah, that's another game that could use an overhaul. That's my number of games for this video. Now moving on, make sure you check out Retro or Die's video in the description, and I think I'm going to do a review of a horror movie next week, because it's October. So if you want, be sure to come back for that. And also, don't forget to rate, comment, favorite, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.